This here is our main window here, and we will have, a visual representation of our composition right here. Next to it here on the left side, we have a project and list of all the ingredients that we use in our project. So in this case, it doesn't work like Photoshop in the sense that if you import something into your canvas, into your file, it will not be saved there. It's always like external files remain, especially for video, audio, stuff like that, but also images. So probably only shapes and text files, texts which created inside After Effects will be saved inside the document, and the rest are external things. So if you move them to another folder, After Effects will start to miss them. So it's basically a linking. So After Effects project is not a big project, it's just a small file. Right, so here we will have a list of all those ingredients that we are using. This is here is a timeline, and you say I cannot scroll because there is no project, there is no time at the moment, but you will have a timeline just like in any video editing software. But this here is a list of layers, just like in Photoshop. So yes, and here are the tools. So we can open them, and you see not all of it is visible. So I can scroll, and sometimes you open a toolbox, and just a second, yeah. And let's say I don't see some options. So notice that, it's hidden somewhere down. So be careful. Sometimes, I say go to tracker, go to somewhere, and there is no such tool. So make sure that you look, maybe it's somewhere here. So basically, these are all the tools that we will be using here. They're kind of stacked here. And of course, for now, probably preview is the only important one. Just close off others. Yeah. Right. So in general, After Effects is not a video editing software, it's more a compositing software. And the idea here is that even though it's theoretically possible to edit a film, you import, 6 hours of footage and you finally make a, 1 hour movie, it's possible, but it would be really, really uncomfortable, and After Effects is not meant for that. That's when you're using video editing software. So in After Effects, it's more like you have a small, a short clip, a minute, 30 seconds, a 1 second clip, whatever, a short clip, and you stack all sorts of effects and titles and letters and who knows what on top of it. Imagine it more like Photoshop in the sense that you open a photograph and you edit and edit and edit that and add elements and so on in the stack of layers. So this will be similar here. Okay, so next thing, we go to create a new composition. So I hit new composition, and I'm prompted with this window here. And basically here, first thing we need to take care about is the resolution. So like in image files, in Photoshop, you can create an image of, 666 pixels by 999 pixels, and there is no problem with that at all. It's not so with video. Even though it's possible to create videos in custom sizes, but then you will be very much limited with your compression methods. There will be lots of troubles later on. So we are usually sticking with some sort of standards. So of course it used to be PAL for Europe and NTSC for America, but now we are in HDTV times. So we will grab HDTV 1080 25 frames per second. So this frames per second, 25 is European standard. Of course, if you are in America, you would use 30 or 29 point something. Japan also uses this one. I think Brazil, not sure, and some other countries. But in Europe, 25 frames. Of course, for classical film, we would go for 24. If it's a hand-drawn animation, there is a high chance that it will be 12 frames per second, and so on. So there are different cases, but most likely it's 25 frames per second and 1080 pixels. So 1080 pixels is the height of the video, and the width is 1920. By the way, if you have a weak computer, you could go to another standard, which is HDTV 720. So, but there is no, you can't select it here. You just need to write it here, 720 by 1280, if I'm correct. If not, check it in Wikipedia and you will find it. Then square pixels. Of course, we are always using square pixels unless you are dealing with some old school, I don't know, CRT monitors or some old school stuff. Then it's not necessarily square pixels. So hopefully you will never need to know what the hell other things are. But if you export something or you import something and you see faces are stretched or squished, there's a high chance that you would have to look into pixel aspect ratio. Right, and then there is a time. So we have frames, seconds, minutes, and hour. So of course, we won't work with so much. Let's say, I don't know, 5 seconds is good enough for us. 0, 0. And black background. Of course, that you can change anytime. This you can change anytime. This you can also change anytime, but your composition might, suffer if you do so. Everything might fall apart. So now we have our composition and we are looking at it at 25%. So you would hopefully you can watch it at 100, but then maybe it doesn't fit. Depends on your screen size. If you have 4K monitor, maybe it's nice. If not, maybe you want to go with a fit up to 100, or you change it, whenever you need it. All right, so here in the timeline, you see we can scroll through timeline, but there is nothing here. So it's just black. And what else? And we'll start with those shape layers. So they are kind of vector stuff, vectors inside After Effects. But when we export actual film, after we are done, of course, we are doing it as a rasterization, raster, as a pixel-based medium. So even though for editing we can use vectors, at the end of the day, they will be pixels. And of course, also we can import things from Illustrator, vector stuff, and at the end of the day, they will become pixels as well. But it's good for logos and stuff like that. Okay, so we'll start with just some tool. I create a rectangle, and you see it's black because my fill color is black. Let's change that to some bright color. I could have stroke, but I won't do that at the moment. Let's see what happened here. So most important part of After Effects, according to me, is this here nesting. You see that anything I have here, it might have, something inside. There is this arrow here, you click on it, and it opens up what's inside. And here we have contents and we have transform. So basically contents, only shape layers will have contents. Might be imported Illustrator stuff, because they will be shape layers as well. But all the rest will have transform. Transform has position, scale, rotation, and opacity. So any image, any video you import will have this. Text will have this. Might be except audio file. Maybe they won't. Yeah, I think they don't. They have audio. Just it says audio. So and normal other things don't have contents. It's only shape layers. So let's see how this works. So now I haven't selected my layer. You see, I selected it, and now it's not selected. So if it's not selected, and I draw another shape, I just created another layer, which inside of it has another object. But if instead I would have selected it and started drawing, you see there is no other layer. It's just one layer, but inside the layer, inside the contents, we already see 2 rectangles. So it's very important to not get confused at the very beginning. Now we will be dealing just with layers. For today, we will not be dealing with things inside a layer. So let's keep one layer for one object, just so it's a bit simpler for now. And we will deal with transform of the whole layer. Also take note that here we see transform of this rectangle 1. Get out of here. Yeah, transform of rectangle 1. So don't get confused with this transform and this transform. So we care of this one for today. It's a transform of whole layer. Right. So we have an object. Now, first thing you notice that its center point is in a weird position. And if I draw something, you see the center is here. If I draw something here, the center is here as well. So it's always, it's always in the center of our canvas. So we will need to learn how to change that. So you select your layer, and this tool pan behind, but also it works as anchor point tool. And you can change position of your center anchor point. Of course, main tool is this one. This is the one we'll be using 90% of the time in After Effects. Also, rotation tool sometimes is used. And then the other ones are for special occasions, so we'll talk about them later. Right, so we have a cube. Now let's animate it. So it sits here, and now we need to create a keyframe in order to fix its position in time, in order to, I don't know, fix another position in different time, and then After Effects will make in-betweens. So I open up my here, and you will see that I have position, scalar, rotation as 3 tracks, 3 separate things. So basically, I create a change in position absolutely separately from rotation. Now we'll start with position. Position is just, position in the screen, so to speak. So first of all, I click this, and it creates animation kind of, track for the position of this object, and it immediately created a keyframe for me right here, wherever my time was. It's this blue diamond. Now, let's say I go to 10th frame, and I want that my object for first 10 frames, it would not move. So I need to create another keyframe where at the point where it will start moving. So I could just move it, but I want it to stay in the same place. So I'll hit this one, which is create a keyframe. So now I have 2 keyframes, but the position doesn't change. And now I go to, I don't know, some other time, 1 second, 10 frames, and I just move my thing somewhere. If I hold Shift, it does it straight, straight line. And now you see I have not moving, moving, and not moving again. Now let's say I want it to stay for a bit and then start going backwards. How do I do it? So first of all, again, I need to fix the position where it will start moving. So again, since I don't want it to move, I'll create a new keyframe with this position, X, Y. This is a position by, it's measured by pixels, and don't forget our dimensions are 1080 by 1920, was it? I think. Yeah, our HD screen size. And we can, of course, write it by hand, type in the values here. But I won't do that. I go here and move it, Shift, backwards. And now stays, moves back. So this is very basics of how things move in After Effects. Now let's say I want my cube to kind of do this. Then here in this pause, I want it to rotate, I don't know, just upside down, and then continue as before. So my rotation has to start at this point here. So again, I turn on animation and create the first keyframe for my rotation only at this, time. Now I go, let's say here, and I, rotate it. Of course, I could just type in, or I could use this tool. And now what happens? It stays, it moves, it rotates, stays, and moves back. Okay, so now we will work with the, we'll make a small exercise called bouncing ball. So it's a very classical exercise for animation students. And first of all, let's open up our browser with image search and type in bouncing ball. Basically, what you'll find is images like this one here. What do we see here? First of all, you see that, we have the trajectory like this. So it starts high above, it hits the ground, then it goes, bounces back, but not as high as it started. So it basically loses energy and till it calms down. Now, of course, if this ball would be made out of stone, it will barely bounce, might be just tiny bit. And if it's a tennis ball, maybe it would bounce even more. So now with the way how it bounces, we can also communicate, the material it's made of. Also, notice that this one here stretches. At this moment, before it bounces, it has a stretch to it. So this is kind of, again, to show the trajectory of the motion, to have more, basically it's kind of It's very appropriate for animated films, and it could be not appropriate for realistic stuff. Like if you're really, realistically, if it's a wooden ball, it would not change its shape at all. If it's a rubber ball, it might change a little bit, but most likely not as well. And of course, if it's a rubber, it would change its shape when it hits the ground. Now notice that here, when it goes up again, it slows down. So you see more images drawn here and way less images here at the bottom. And it repeats the same here. Also notice that in the first contact, it squishes most, then squishes less, and it barely squishes the last ones. So we'll try to do that. We'll try to do that. So first of all, I draw my ellipse, my ball, circle. And of course, hit Shift to have it straight. Now, next thing we want to do is, of course, change its pivot point, anchor point in After Effects. I put it here in the center. Now, for it to be more kind of impactful, we will make it also rotate. So, and of course, if it's one color and it's round shape, we won't be able to see that it rotates. So we will make it not red, but with gradient. So how do you do it? You select it and you hit here fill. You click this text here. And we choose gradient. And it's fine for me. It looks good. Right. Now we will do this in 3 steps. First, we'll animate the position, then we'll animate the rotation, and lastly, we'll animate the scale of an object. And it's important to keep this order because it will be much easier to do so. So basically, the worst thing to do is to start scaling things and only then do rotation. And why? Because let's say I wanted to hit the ground, so I squish it just by scaling, and now I want to rotate it. See what happens, it doesn't scale properly. Another thing is that we will be rotating it only by 90 degrees each time. And again, if you rotate at some different angle, our scaling will depend on its rotation. So it's important as well. Okay, we start on the top. We go to the beginning of the time and we create its position. We go a couple of frames. It hits the ground. Now it bounces back. A few frames more. Of course, you could calculate and be precise in those. I'm not gonna be. You could. It goes here. Bounces even less. And probably we should do at least two more small jumps, but I'm not gonna do that. So now first, let's see what happens. It's a bit too slow, especially right here. So I select keyframes, move it. Let's see again. Of course, now it's a bit hard for you to see because you're looking at through Teams, so it might not show all the frames. Just in case, I will scale everything a little bit so it happens faster. So if you hit Alt, you see all of them proportionally scale. It kind of works. I'm not going to polish it at the moment. Now, another thing you notice that in the image, we have sharp lines here in the trajectory. And then nice curvy lines here, sharp line here, which is not the case here. So how do we change it? I hit Alt again, and you see I broke the dependence of one handle and the other one. That's like in Illustrator, probably like in Photoshop as well. So we are able to make nice, shapes here. Let's see again. It's a bit better. Now, of course, we could still fix it, but let's not waste time. And we'll jump to rotation now. So with rotation, it's very easy. First, I turn on the rotation. Now I want to go to the next frame, to the next keyframe, where we have a keyframe in a position, this one. Of course, I could try to be very specific and catch it here, but I could just click this one. What does it do? It's in a position line, and it goes to next keyframe. And here, I'll just type in 90. Then it's, I think it's 180. Next is probably 270. And then we will have 360. And look what happens, it's 0. It's one time, so it rotated one circle and 0 degrees. Next one is 90. And you see, now it rotates like that. Next thing is our scale. So first I just turned on the scale, and you see I have a first keyframe here. So the scale is 100, 100. So it's, just proper proportions. Now I want here, so the ball squishes here and comes back to its original shape here. Squishes here a little bit, comes back to original shape. So first of all, I will copy this keyframe, just the scale, Ctrl-C, or edit, copy. Go to this, frame, and I hit Ctrl-V. I pasted the scale, values of scale, 100, 100, and we have a keyframe. And do it here again. Now here, it has to squish. So I squish it. Of course, if I squish it, I have to, make it longer. Of course, it would be nice to really calculate and make it nice so it doesn't change its volume. Yeah, but I'm too bad in arithmetic, so I'm not gonna do that. And you see now it gets back to its original shape. Here I will scale it a bit. And here, tiny, tiny bit. And of course I would need to continue. It doesn't feel right if it stops right here. Now, what problems do we have? Is here it starts squishing already, which doesn't make any sense. So I could do two things. If I want to be more realistic, I could just move this frame here, and it just doesn't change its shape up till it hits the ground. Or if I want to be more like cartoonish, I could elongate the ball. Do something like that. So now along its trajectory, it kind of elongates, squishes, comes back, and so on. So let's try doing this simple exercise of bouncing ball.